Hello, welcome to Platform on the network service of the NTA. I'm Ruth Aguele. Flooding is not new to Nigeria, and we know it has become a major hazard in the country year in, year out. We get to witness the devastating impacts of the flood around the country. If we recall, in 2020, the floods affected all 36 states and the FCT. 349 local government areas were affected across the country, and more than 2,353,647 people were displaced, with a number of deaths recorded. Now, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency, in line with its statutory mandate, which amongst other functions is to issue forecast on flood, sensitize Nigerians on flood management towards mainstreaming disaster reduction efforts for sustainable socio-economic development. Well, recently, it released an annual flood outlook for 2021, which predicts that 302 local government areas in the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory fall within moderate probable flood risk area, while 121 local government areas in 28 states are at high risk of flooding. Well, this publication is part of measures to raise awareness on the inherent dangers of flooding to minimize the negative impacts. So how do we as a nation ensure preparedness and mitigation against this yearly devastating impacts of flood in the country? How proactive has the agency been in information dissemination to avert imminent risk of flooding in the country? Most importantly, how can the severity of the expected flooding for this year be avoided? Well, I don't have the answers, but I'm sure my guests certainly do. And our focus on Platform today is 2021 flood outlook for Nigeria. And my guest is Engineer Clement Nze. He's the Director General, Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Thank you very much, DG, for joining us on the Platform.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here.
All right, so let me just quickly take you through a bit of his profile. Engineer Clement Nze is a certified engineer by profession under the auspices of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Vienna, Austria. He was trained in groundwater hydrology at the Institute of Hydrology, National Research Center for Environment and Health in Germany. Engineer Nze began his career in the public service when he was employed in the erstwhile Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Water Resources as a senior hydrologist, hydrogeologist in 1993, and has over 36 years of professional work experience, with more than 27 years spent in the water resources and environment sectors. Now, his work experience traversed through the length and breadth of civil engineering, the likes of highway transport, aviation engineering, water and wastewater engineering, civil structural engineering, and the rest, of course. He is a registered engineer with the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, that is COREN, and a member of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. He equally belongs to such other professional bodies like the International Association of Hydrological Sciences, amongst others. He was the director in charge of Engineering Hydrology Department of the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency before he was appointed Director General of the agency by President Muhammadu Buhari in October 2018. Wow, your profile is a handful, Engineer Nze.
Thank you.
And that's just a bit of it.
Yes, it is a bit.
Okay, so I will be the only one on Platform. I have a panelist here. He's our environment correspondent here in NTA, Onenge Fine Face. Thank you very much, Onenge, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ruth.
All right. So, Engineer Nze, let's begin this way. Forgive me, I call you Eze. It's Nze.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking effective management of flood, of course, it requires, more like taking stock of historical flood trends and, giving prospect for future expectations if we're looking at floods in Nigeria. So let's begin by looking at assessment. How would you assess the 2020 flood for Nigeria? What did we not get right as a nation?
Thank you once again for having me. Some authorities could blame COVID-19 lockdown in terms of proactiveness in carrying out the needful. with regards to taking care of the environment. But much was done by the agency, the Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, and especially the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu, who convened a meeting in May 2020, where he publicly presented the 2020 flood outlook and went further, or even before then, to disseminate the information to each of the state governors in Nigeria. And each of them was given a one-page report of local government areas in each of the states that are likely to be inundated or adversely affected by flood. And the measures to be taken to avert possible flood disaster, we are equally outlined. This is in addition to giving the books or the publication itself, but it was summarized, which he endorsed by himself, and they were dispatched to each of the state governors. But the response we got in 2020 wasn't quite appreciative, wasn't quite encouraging in terms of response. Because we were urging the state governments or state governors and that they should use their necessary apparatus. Just as they were making a case for COVID-19, the measure to be taken by individuals, the issue of awareness about flood issues should equally be factored into the processes of campaign or enlightening the citizens. We saw the level of devastation, like you mentioned in your intro. About 69 lives were lost. Even one life means a lot, but about 69 lives were lost in 2020. Not talk about millions of people that were displaced, houses that were destroyed, agricultural farms, like in Kebbi State, close to 500,000 rice farms, hectares of rice farm were damaged. The same story in Jigawa, in Anambra, and so on and so forth. So it's not yet to Uhuru in terms of action being taken by especially state governments.
Okay, and recently the agency released the 2021 flood outlook, the annual flood outlook. Year in, year out, we get to see this annual flood outlook, and this is for 2021. But tell us, what are the probable flood risk areas, for this year? Which states rather should be concerned?
If I may take us a little bit backwards to get the story or the history of Nigeria in terms of the geography of it, or what we call hydrology of Nigeria. That will give you more understanding. But before I go there are three levels of flooding that Nigeria experiences year in, year out. One is the river flooding, which affects mainly the states that lie within rivers Niger and Benue, their banks. River flooding.
Yes.
And there are other major rivers in Nigeria like Rima, Sokoto, Anambra, Ogosho. There are many of them rivers that could overflow their banks and they will flood the environment. That is river flooding, one type of flooding. The second one is the urban or flash flood, which is aggravated by poor urban management, types of drainage system, building within the floodplains and so on. Then the third leg of it is coastal flooding for the states that are within the coastal areas. But then the river flooding is the most that affects so much states, followed by the urban flooding. Now, I was talking about the geography or the hydrology of Nigeria. Yes. There is a basin we call Niger Basin Authority. We keep mentioning it, Niger Basin rather, which is the river Niger system. There are 9 countries. For the Niger side, you have Guinea, Mali, that's Guinea-Conakry. Guinea, Conakry, Mali, Benin Republic, Burkina Faso, Niger, Côte d'Ivoire. And then on River Benue angle, you have Cameroon, from where River Benue takes its course from. And then Chad. Major rivers in Chad flow into River Benue. They all move down to Nigeria. We call it Niger Basin, like the basin where that you wash your hand. Yes. That hole from where the water goes out, the wastewater, that way Nigeria is staying. In all this
like everything
comes down to Nigeria. Yes, and the land mass is 1.5 million square kilometers. The land mass. Nigeria land mass is about 593,000 square kilometers. But the land mass of these 9 countries is 1.5 million square kilometers. with about 130 million inhabitants, although about 80% are Nigerians inside Nigeria, but 80% of 130 million people in this basin belong to Nigeria. Nigeria occupies 30% of land mass, as I mentioned, 1.5 million. Nigeria occupies 30% of it. So whatever happens in all these countries I've mentioned, in terms of their rainfall in their own locations, the flooding that will generate from there, as well as even pollution, they will all meet in Nigeria. That is why year in, year out, we keep experiencing river flooding. Now, for 2021, from what we have predicted, 121 local government areas in Nigeria, about covering 27 or 28 states, are going to be highly impacted by flood in the course of the year. And another 302 AGS that will cover the entire country with FCT will receive moderately severe flooding in the course of the year. Maybe the remaining 351 or thereabouts may not have that same level of devastation in terms of flooding. Like we said, the essence of the prediction is to alert the nation, is to prepare. You know, when the watchmen, they sound alarm, it's for the city, the soldiers to get prepared. So what we are doing by the annual flood outlook presentation or publication and the sensitization program that follows from there is to get the people prepared. Like I mentioned somewhere else and always anywhere, it's better to be over-prepared and not be prepared at all.
Well, we'll get to that preparedness, but I know Onenge has to come in now. Onenge.
Well, I was just wondering, you said a lot about the river basin, and what comes to mind is, what about damming? Looking at the quantum and volume of water that comes to Nigeria, and considering the fact that we have a lot of dry lands that can use water coming into this country from these two rivers.
You see, this is one of the things that pains us professionals in this area so much. Many countries are at war because of river water. Egypt wanted to go to war against Ethiopia. Ethiopia is building a dam, what the Great Renaissance Dam. Grand Renaissance Dam. Ethiopia is upstream of Egypt. Before growing up, we thought River Nile is all about Egypt. We didn't know. But now we know better. River Nile passes through Ethiopia before coming into Egypt. And they are putting a dam. Egypt says you can't put a dam there. It will affect us negatively. Now, in Nigeria, if you consider the quantum of water that we waste annually, it is amazing. I have been in a meeting, international meetings for Nigeria, where we negotiate the sharing formula, as it were. Just as we sharing formula for our local resources in Nigeria. The 9 countries we meet together. Guinea, Conakry, you are upstream. Don't take so amount of water. So that Mali, downstream, we have their own to take. Mali, don't take beyond this. So that in Niger, we have something to take. Niger, don't take beyond this amount, percentage. So that Benin Republic we have. And then Guinea, Benin. This is the amount we take before it comes to Nigeria. Now, the question that we pose to us, when we are arguing 15% threshold, don't take more than 15% of the water passing through your side. Now, the question posed to Nigeria, which you couldn't answer. You lose over 200 billion cubic meters of fresh water annually to the Atlantic Ocean. What do you do with it? At the end of the day, they ended up concluding, because we are the only Anglophone country. The rest are Francophone. The percentage was jacked to 25%. So that in other words, each country should take 25% of the volume of water passing through. Now, what can we do? Nigeria, I belong to the school of thought that keeps saying that Nigeria doesn't have enough dams. Dams serve a lot of purposes. But for that, let me just take 3. Irrigation, hydropower, and flood control. Canada has not less than 933 large dams. Nigeria is having maybe about 56 large dams. The large, when you talk about large, it's based on the crest, what is about 50 meters and above high. You classify it as large dam. Nigeria has about 56 or even less. There are other dams anyway, maybe altogether less than 400 dams. But I'm saying, in fact, India, there only runs to several thousands of large dams. Like US, maybe over 5,000. Now, the more dams we have in Nigeria, the better for us for different purposes. Because we're talking about flood. Now, but before the dams, what can we do? You see, some other nationals from other countries have been to Nigeria. They weep when they see the volume of water Nigeria has. If Morocco should see that, Morocco will be transformed into another Dubai, what Nigeria has in terms of water. We have vast land, we have large amount of water annually. But like I mentioned, more than 210,000 cubic meters of this water, fresh, going to the Atlantic, lost and lost forever, annually.
But you know, Engineer Inze, from what you're saying, it's more like an eye-opener. A lot of people, you know, are amazed with this information you're letting out now. It's one thing to have these dams you're talking about. What about maintenance of hydraulic structures like that? Are we maintaining the ones we have, even if we're thinking of having more dams?
Well, that's another challenge. You know, some of the dams, especially the hydropower, were concessioned. I think basically 3 of them, Kainji, Jeba, and Shiroro dams. Kainji and Jeba on River Niger. Kainji first, downstream about 100 kilometers, you have Jeba. The Shiroro Dam is on River Kaduna, but all within the Niger State territory. It empties into River Niger anyway. Now, it was basically for hydropower. And operators of these dams, they are mainly after power generation. Because some other places, people will be talking about the dams help to flood environments, which is true when poorly managed. So their main aim is to ensure that they maintain a certain level, reservoir level, to ensure that their turbines are operational.
Well, we're doing the maintenance check.
Yes, maintenance check is being done, but the area may have challenge with is the operational models, whether it's being operated optimally.
Okay.
Lower the dam when you're supposed to lower it, close your gate when you need to close it, instead of doing a panic release of water which flows downstream. Is that aspect that is a challenge. At sometime last year, we saw a clip, they say Kanji Dam busted. And you will see jet of water going up like that. But I looked at the environment, I saw this can't be Kanji Dam. There was panic in certain quarters in Nigeria. I called Kanji Dam, one of the hydrologists in charge. I sent the video clip. He saw a guy, I'm sitting on a Kanji Dam. We are holding a management meeting. Nothing is wrong with the dam. Shortly after, my other officer called me. What is happening to the dam? What is happening to the dam? He's a professional to the core in that area. For a dam to burst or to fail, talk of being to collapse, these are different issues. Yeah. To fail could be a certain component of it must give in way. But to collapse, that's a disaster for the entire nation. So I thought that there's not a problem with the Kainji, it was a fake news. And I had to do some press release for that. So the dams, in times of maintenance, yes, they are doing it. But when it comes to the operational guidelines for optimal use, having a balance of release of water when you ought to release it to maintain natural ecosystem, and then when you need to close your gates, instead of doing panic release of water, there's some problem in that axis.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm still concerned about the fact that Nigeria is a country with a lot of paradox. At some point, we have excess water. At another point, we don't have enough water, especially in the northernmost part of the country. We are going to talk about the irrigation opportunities of the water coming into the country. Also, if you consider Lake Chad, which is also within the countries that contribute to the river. How do we leverage this opportunity to make sure that in dry season our farmers have access to water rather than lose all when they come in?
We have been advocating for that. That it looks, sorry to use the word, criminal in nature, that such gold is passing through your territory, you do nothing about it. It may be you only allow it to devastate you, and then you call for relief material from NEMA to come and cushion the effects. Meanwhile, lives have been lost, a natural ecosystem has been dislocated, people, the natural environment has been dislocated. Now, these states, and I will say it again, virtually every state in Nigeria has a university where you have people that are well trained, people who want to do work in terms of their background in the field of either hydrology, engineering, and so on. Why not to task them on what to do? Now, we've been talking about creating channels. For instance, River Niger or River Benue has about 100 kilometers stretch in your own state. Why not create diversion canals, 30 meters wide, 30 meters deep? Then you take it to an empty place, like you mentioned, upload, you have a lot of vast land. You go there and create another community, create a very big reservoir. For us to know about what we call a Jabi Lake, is artificial. Somebody thought of it and purposely built it. If you go there, like today in Nansala, it is a behalf of activities.
It's a tourist site.
Yes. You can do that a number of such in your own state. Capture this water, transport it to a place, build a large reservoir. Each state could have as many as possible, depending on their land mass. When you do it, that water is conserved there, so to say, perennially. When the level of water passing through your side, like River Niger, gets a certain threshold, it will be diverted to that point. That becomes another community in terms of the ecosystem, environment is cool, tourist activities goes on there, even recharging the aquifer, the underground water, what is happening in Jabi Lake. Prior to that Jabi Lake, the yield of the boreholes within like Guarempa, Life Camp, Jabi, and so on, was quite low. But because of the water that you are seeing there, it has been going down, recharging, filling the aquifer in those areas, that the yield has dramatically increased.
Well, you know, engineer, urban flooding, we both know, is linked to inadequacies of drainage channels. You know, when it becomes too small to contain the excess water for runoff, you know, it clogs the channels. Now, we see a lot of communities, they have poor drainage channels. If we want to, you know, curb some of these flood trends in our communities, what about drainage channels?
The challenge we have here, quite many anyway. Up to time, even in the city, a contractor, maybe in the estates we have, estates, they just put a drainage, just maybe say make it 2 feet, which is 600 meters, sorry, millimeters rather, and make it 3 feet deep, about 900 millimeters deep, finish. We didn't talk about the amount of rainfall within that locality. What is usually, what is the amount of runoff, the overland flow, when it rains? Is that drainage adequate enough to carry it? My office is at Jabi, sorry, at Otako. If you are moving from Bega towards Uye, I don't know how long you have been in Abuja. Have you ever heard that the drainage by the size got flooded? It has not.
Yes.
The capacity is enough to carry. So up to time, to answer your question, people just they build without any consideration. Just put a space. Go to most of the estates here in Abuja. That's what we have. They want to maximize the environment, put buildings everywhere is completely filled up with plots of land built, built. No space for speculation. Everywhere is even at they put interlock and so on and so forth. But the drainage system not adequate to carry the run of excess water when the rains come. And then in the cities or even villages you mentioned, most of the drainages where they do exist are blocked. Most of the drainages are clogged.
Due to man-made efforts?
Man-made, yes. And when you drop it at Fine First compound, Fine First will sweep during the rainy season, pour it inside the runoff. It will go and block that of water somewhere.
So basically, you will say, from what you're telling us now, that individuals contribute to the problem.
Yes.
And it's quite unfortunate because from your prediction for the 2021 outlook, the severity of the flooding for this year is something one don't want to imagine. And there's expectation of flash and urban floods in about 23 states or more. Now, you said usually when this outlook is being presented, it's been distributed to state governors.
Yes.
Is there more like a follow-up, to ensure that those recommendations and the outlook are heeded to?
Okay, for this year, 2021, in part, another good fallout of this COVID lockdown was maximizing the online meetings. So a lot of state commissioners of water resources, of environment, from different states in Nigeria were part of the meeting we held on the 6th. They were there all through. Some governors sent their commissioners that came physically for physical meeting. So we will do as much as we can within our limited resources to follow up with sensitization aspect, having done the public presentation. But we're expecting, that has been our plea, that the state governments should be able to complement the federal level. In Abuja, that way we are. The forecasting agencies, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency is there, NIMET, they have done theirs to tell us the amount of rainfall we expect this year, when it will start in each local government, when it will end, and number of days of rainfall in the year. And then our own agency will come up with our own. We do the best we can to interface with the state governments. But much is to be done by each of the state governments to ensure that the people awareness is created for people to take necessary action. The DH NOA, but it was because of other exigencies of office that he couldn't come that morning, but he sent the higher power delegation. And the document has been sent to them. They will be sending them to each of the local government areas in Nigeria because they have presence in the 774 LGS, the NOA, for them to now mobilize the people in those areas. But this is also the federal. We expect the state to work with the federal to ensure that those who voted them into power, those whom they met when they were canvassing for votes, they should go back to them.
And sensitize them.
Sensitize them, yes.
Well, the outlook for 2021 compared to that of 2020 is a little worrisome. There may even be severe consequences here than we had last year. I want to ask, for the sake of emphasis and context, can you share with us those states that need to take this alert more seriously?
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, and I will say it again, the flood outlook gives you a general overview, and it is predicated on measured items we did in various states. We have equipment that where we take records every day by our rivers across the major rivers across the country. These records measurements have been done. Like if I call any of my whom we call the gauge readers, if I call Lokoja, he will tell me what level of River Niger after meeting with Benue downstream. What was the level of water today? If I call Makodi, he will give me. If I call Onisha, if I call Uroboki, where River Benue enters Nigeria for the first time, the first point of measurement, I will get. If I call Jidebo in Kebbi State for River Niger. Now, these measurements that have been done compared also, in addition to rainfall, over 40 years. And then in trying to use the climate change issue to interrogate them. That's what's giving us the result we are reading out here. It's scientific all over the world. It's the same thing we did here. The kind of expertise applied is what is obtainable in any other advanced country you can think of. Now, for the level of severity, when you talk about the states, like Abia, Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Bauchi, Bayelsa, Benue, Cross River Delta, Ebonyi, Edo, Gombe, Imo, Jigawa, Kebbi, Adamawa states. That's what the state that we are, from our prediction. The LGAs are also listed, but I don't have the details here. Local government areas per these states are also itemized. And these documents are being made available to each of the state governments, that these are the states, sorry, LGAs in your own states, that you should watch out for.
And now it's good you put some of those states on the limelight.
Yes.
And it's part of your mandate to ensure that, you know, these states heed to the recommendations from what you're saying. If, for instance, now we want to take stock of the losses recorded, socioeconomic losses of this flooding, should there be, because some experts are of the opinion that should there be a multidisciplinary platform for generating an effective strategic policy, you know, so that people will comply with the awareness that is being created? Do you agree with that?
I quite agree with you, but the Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, we are working within the law that established us. And we have other agencies of government, especially at the state levels, that have the powers to do a kind of enforcement of the things we have said. It's just like maybe somebody has committed an offense. Police will arrest. It is the court that will decide what will be the final outcome, whether to imprison the person or set the person free. So ours is to bring to limelight what we are expecting, what's likely to happen, and we inform the state governments. Each state government, like Abuja here, FCT, has town planning authority that has the powers, like Abuja here is a development control department, has the power to pull down structures, remove them from wherever. Our agency doesn't have that, such a power. Each state has its own town planning authorities that are mandated by law, by act, to ensure that what our agency has said is implemented or, brought to bear upon the citizens.
Now, that is where the collaboration...
Yes, we collaborate. Like about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, a senior citizen alerted our agency about development that is going on within a floodplain in the FCT, somewhere in Uye. I called the Director General, FCT Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. We scheduled. Then we went there. He himself brought in the Development Control Department of the FCT, Engineering Services Department of the FCT, or the FCT. There were about 3 or so agencies of FCT. Then with our own agency, we were there. It's a heavy, I would say, billion naira project that is going on. They call it is a recreational facility. But in so doing, they have interfered with the course of nature. There are even services, and then it is the Arab contractor that is in charge of Uye district in terms of infrastructure there. Piling laterite sand on top of services, manholes, so there may be cables, and then consecrating the natural channel. Because they want to develop and put all these people go for recreation, something, maybe recession programs, all kinds of things. There and then, instruction was given by the relevant authority, stop work. But I don't know whether if we go there today, whether the work actually was stopped. We said we're going to convoke a stakeholders meeting. Relevant authorities of the FCDA and then those of us in our own agency and other agency necessary to come and see. Yes, we are given approval in 2015, and the development control says every 2 years you revalidate. If you are given approval in 2015, has the engineering department approved your drawings to know whether they are in line with what is provided for in that aspect of WUYE? So we are yet to do that meeting.
Well, to push this conversation on multi-sectoral collaboration a little further now, we know that waste management is a big problem as far as flood control in urban centers are concerned. Do you have any mechanism to engage relevant agencies to ensure that Nigerians are taught how best to manage waste, especially plastic waste that most often block water channels?
Well, we don't have that platform, but like I just mentioned here, we try to reach out to relevant agencies or government to inform them about the dangers inherent in this indiscriminate disposal of waste, especially plastic waste. When I came to Abuja, Abuja wasn't like this anyway, and the company that brought me to Abuja was in charge of waste management in the FCT, and it was being done very well at that time. But because of a population increase and so much things, encroachment and compromise in the terms of development, you see a lot of plastic waste all over Abuja or even other cities. So we are doing the best we can in terms of enlightenment. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe by the month of June or towards the end of this month, we can visit some locations as much as we can, because we have offices, zonal offices. But we are having a meeting between 23, 24, and 25.
You know, Engineer Nze, you have a vast knowledge when we're talking hydrological services. And part of the recommendations when I read the annual outlook was an imaginative and innovative recommendations that should be applied if we're looking at management approaches for flood risk, management. What kind of innovations, was your agency referring to?
Now, the issue of flood is universal. It's all over the world. In fact, about 55% of natural disasters all over the world are flood related. What is in vogue now is the issue of developing resilience. Like those of them in disaster management will tell you, flood is a hazard whenever flood occurs. Yes. But how you manage it will make it become a disaster or not. The best we can do is to encourage state government, for instance, under the Presidential Committee on Flood Relief and Rehabilitation, Presidential Committee of Flood Relief and Rehabilitation that was established, I think, in 2012, after the 2012 flood incident. It is co-chaired by Aliko Dangote and Olisa Awakoba. Now, we have visited some states. I work with them too. Some state governments have been able to build what they call a wet housing and dry housing, so that during the rainy season proper, when the flood, maybe about 3 months, depending on the state, people will be made to be living upland. In fact, there are what we call flood hostels built by the federal government. I've been to that of Ilokoja in Kogi State. I've been there several times. And we have some dormitories, the conventional dormitories as you have it in secondary schools, with the boreholes, clinics, and so on and so forth. So that people will begin to manage, find a way that within this period you move over. Like Niger State told us that some time ago, 2014, that they have dry housing and wet housing, which is a model, if it is existing anywhere, that other states should adopt to be able to manage. It is for a particular period of about maybe 3 months, like it up north, between July, August, September.
Well, you've talked about the flood expected from the rivers, Niger and Benue, and then that of a flash flow. Let's go to the coastal parts of the country now. What's the situation to expect from the coastal region in Nigeria as far as flooding is concerned?
Climate change It depends on what happens. If these states in Nigeria like Ondo, Lagos, Rivers, Bayelsa, they border the coastline, the Atlantic. Then depending on what happens, in some area like Bayelsa, maybe about 1.5 meters, or they're about 1 to 2 meters. That is the difference in the natural ground level and the river or the ocean. Now, once there is a ice melts and the ocean begins to swell, you cannot expect that there will be a push inland. They depend on the height difference. Coastal flooding will occur or may not occur. That's why some states are encouraged to build barriers as much as possible within those very more difficult areas that are more prone to coastal flooding. You can build some concrete walls. Maybe if you know Lagos along the marine and other axis up to Victoria Land, you could see that some concrete structures were built. So that when the ocean begins to swell and then tidal wave, maybe movement of the ship and so on, it can only be pushing and going back. Such could go a long way too. And I saw a bit of it in Lokoja, in River Benue.
Well, okay. Go ahead.
In 2020, the Nigerian Television Authority went around almost all the states affected by the flood. And a common denominator, as far as the people are concerned, was the fact that the subnational government now hardly respond to the early warning systems. Rather, they come up when the damage has been done to start thinking of palliatives and relief materials. What difference should we be expecting this time around?
Well, like I mentioned, the level of participation in this year's public presentation was much higher than what we witnessed in, last year. When I say higher, in terms of the political participation.
Political will.
Yes. When you see that, because letters were sent to all the governors in Nigeria, the frontline ministers in terms of flood issues, like aviation, agriculture, environment, and I think FCT. Each of them received letters, ministers. And then the level of participation regarding the commissioners in the states. Some of them were with us online, and some of them were physically present. So I'm expecting that the response this year might be much better than what happened in 2020. And we've been doing this year in year, so I'm expecting that because of the devastation, the pains the people have been passing through, I believe strongly that this year will be better in terms of response at the grassroots level.
If we're talking response, if we're looking at effective flood disaster management, especially in a changing environment like Nigeria, where our weather condition, we have extreme weather condition. I know part of what NISA is proposing is the use of collaborating with agencies on the use of space-based information and technology. That's part of the recommendations in the outlook. What has NISA done in that regard to establish it? And how far would that go?
Now, the agency collaborates, that's NISA, collaborates with other sister agencies, namely the Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, where we get rainfall data, what you call precipitation, in our prediction. We use it to do our prediction. We collaborate with the NEMA, National Emergency Management Agency. In fact, NEMA has done so much for us. In 2020, at our request, in the spirit of the collaboration, they gave us 3 automatic weather observation systems, which we are putting in some universities, 3 of them, and it is quite costly. So NEMA is always available when needed. NEMA has done so much for us. Likewise, NIMET, we share data free of charge. We don't pay. Also, we collaborate. I'm coming to the issue of space.
Yes.
The space agency, NASDRA. We collaborate with NASDRA because they have the capabilities, the capacity to do monitoring of the flood issues using space technology. We work with them. And some of the data we use in our prediction are provided by the space agency. And we are expecting that collaboration to be deepened in terms of getting real-time information about flooding as they occur for future, to help us in the better planning subsequently. What I'm saying, getting real-time data, like if somebody is calling you now, that time you are receiving it is when the call has come in. Whether at a minute past 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. So they have the capability to capture the flood, the hour it is occurring, and to be able to transmit it to us.
Okay.
We have some little level of satellite equipment we use in our measurements.
All right, Onenge, I know you want to ask a final question because we're running out of time. Go ahead.
All right, I want to understand if you have any feedback mechanism for members of communities affected by the flood or to be affected by the flood to reach you in case they need clarification information.
Now, we developed an app, flood mobile app, in 2020, but it still needs some level of refinement because of flood, funds constraints. On that issue, we are liaising with the Federal Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, disaster management, to see how far they can help us to do that, to finalize it. That flood app, if you don't have phone, most people in Nigeria have phone.
Yes, even people.
No matter where they are.
Areas, yeah.
So that if anything is happening on the spot, you send out a text message, ordinary text. You don't need to go through, it's not Android or whatever. So we are developing that one. But there's another one we have that if you call, those of them who have a little bit like Android telephone, no matter where you are standing, you can, or if I want to get, okay, I want to go to Karishi, you press. It will tell you whether there's rainfall, whether there's flood there. It gives you information every 3 hours. So that's why we have developed it. That if you have it, if you download it in your app, this is Play Store, it can tell you, give you information every 3 hours of any location in Nigeria. Want to find out whether there will be flooded or there will not be flooded.
Okay, Engineer Inze, your final thoughts. You know, year in, year out, this is one issue that is being discussed. And we get to see the losses recorded. You know, it's very painful when people are told to do the right thing and we keep seeing that same attitude repeat itself. What is your message to Nigerians? The rains will come. It's inevitable. What is your message?
To early preparation, or like we put it, early information you receive and then acting early enough will save the day. Everybody is involved or should be involved. Don't think that at your own level you can't do much. Clean your own immediate environment. Government should have the political will or capacity to remove structures that are within the flood plains. Don't allocate lands to estate developers without having done the proper environmental impact assessment studies. There should be flood vulnerability mapping of locations before you can envisage the development in there. Or else, what happened at Day last year, they call it Sunday Dewey Estate, and then the other Threadmore Estate in Lube could occur. So, estate developers, before you do so, please do flood vulnerability mapping to know whether there will be flood in such an area, and they have to provide for it anyway.
All right. Thank you very much, Engineer Clement Inze, for your time with us. Thank you for the efforts you're putting in to ensure that Nigerians are sensitized, they're aware, and they look out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you also for helping to escalate our information.
All right, that's why we're here.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and Onenge Fineface, our environment correspondent, thank you very much for your time on platform.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we've been looking at the 2021 flood outlook for Nigeria. You know that the rains will come. We can't run away from it. While the government is putting in measures to manage the hazards associated with flood, we should do our own part. It's a collective responsibility. My name is Ruth Aguela, and that's Platform. Bye.